For the better part of my career, more than 20 years, I've been a corporate girl in supply chain management and logistics or classical marketing. But come 2020, COVID and the Great Reset, I got an opportunity to work in a non-profit organization which was helping young unemployed people to be able to break out of that trap of unemployment by connecting them with their first employment opportunity, allowing them to build experience, build that reference letter, and then move on to bigger opportunities. My name is Nobantu, and in this season of my life, my ambition is to help the emerging social entrepreneur to be able to flatten that learning curve, scale up their projects, and deliver more impact quicker than ever before. Join us on the NPO Bootcamp as we show you how to level up your social enterprise. Kate, you've given us a lovely overview of the programs that you're running, some of the partnerships that are supporting that. What I'd like to understand now is behind the scenes, the machine that makes all of this work. How is the organization structured from that point of view?
Sure. So we have got a total of 5 staff members, including me,
that are doing all
of this work.
Okay.
Which means that obviously then we rely quite heavily on volunteers.
Okay.
So at the moment we've got 13 very committed volunteers, and then obviously we have a lot of people that will come to, our one-day events as well. But the 13 really do keep us rolling.
When you say very committed, how do you determine who's committed versus not committed?
Time, basically. So these are people that have given us, a year of their lives.
Okay.
It's not a huge time investment. We look at generally 1 to 3 days a month. But these are people that are highly invested in the program. They've taken on, most of them are the family mentors that we spoke about.
Yes,
so they're helping us run the programs. We've also got a lovely lady that comes and does a lot of work in our office. She comes in once a week. So it's a variety of roles, but it's unpaid people at the end of the day that are really instrumental in keeping the program running. And then we also have a lovely group of our management committee, which is sort of like our board of directors. And what I really like about our management committee compared to other places that I've worked in the past is that they are people that have some experience with the on-the-ground work as well. So they're not necessarily all involved on a day-to-day basis anymore, but at some point in their history, they were mentors, they were team leaders, they were in the office. So they're people that actually understand how things run, and that really informs the way that they make their decisions as well.
Okay. Are you done there, or can I just go back to the volunteers? Because you say these are people that have given you a year of their time. Is there a structure to the volunteering? Because if I look at the kind of programs that you are running, you can't have somebody that shows up when they feel like it and show up when they're not. So is there some kind of regulation about that relationship, even though it's a volunteer and not a salaried person?
Definitely. So as you say, we need people that are reliable, and not just for ourselves, but also because we're asking the children and the families to build relationships with them, and it's not fair to them to have people that are unreliable, right? And so it's particularly with the Mentors program, which is our most committed form of volunteering. We do a lot of training before they start. So they'll attend at least one, full morning training session. They've got material that they then work through. And then for at least 3 months or 3 visits, they'll go out with an established volunteer and they'll learn how that person does it. All of our mentors operate a little bit differently. They all bring their personal flavor, but they need to see how else it can be done before they start now just going out and kind of doing their own thing. And then they are required to attend a certain number of training sessions throughout the year as well.
What kind of training do they receive?
So this year, our focuses are on advocacy. We've done that one already. We're doing one on compassion fatigue and one on boundaries.
I've never heard that one before, compassion fatigue.
It's a very real thing.
I've never heard of that. And I'm assuming it fits into the mental health bucket.
Definitely.
Can we park it and come back later? Because I'd love to explore it, because like I said, I've never heard that before. Okay, great. So carry on about, we were talking about the training that you offer your volunteers.
So we offer training, and then obviously also, there are expectations that we place on them when they go out, when they do their visits. They have a certain paperwork burden that they need to fulfill, and then they need to help us as we're also getting more information from the families, because without the information, we can't offer them the support that they actually need, right? Sure. And so we do have, certain situations where even our volunteers actually need to be actively managed. You can't just have a volunteer come to the program and let them do whatever they want. They're out there representing your brand, and they're out there fulfilling your mission, or so you hope. But obviously sometimes that doesn't go well. And so you need to be very active, and that's why we try to have touch points throughout the year so that we have a good relationship with them. And then you also need to be able to be upfront with your volunteers. And if they're not coming to the party or pulling their weight, you need to be able to have a frank conversation to say, is this still working for all of us? And if it's not, you might even need to ask them to move on.
So how does that conversation look as a volunteer? Because when I've been employed, I would have a set of KPIs that I need to deliver against. As a volunteer in your environment, what does that look like?
So we have 2 different volunteer agreements that they'll sign. One is a code of conduct.
So there's an actual document that you sign.
Yeah, obviously for our committed volunteers.
Right.
If you're just coming to pack things, that's a different arrangement.
Okay.
But for our committed volunteers, they've got a code of conduct that they'll sign. And then we also have what we call a handbook. That's basically the set of guidelines as to how to be a mentor.
Okay.
And they'll sign that as well, because those are both part of the training that we're running. And then whenever we have a problem, it should be addressed by the points in there. So we can go back to that and we can say, listen, do you remember that we talked about this? Do you remember I explained to you why this is a rule? So for example, I said earlier, we never give cash to the family.
Yes, I remember you saying that earlier.
Why is that a rule? Because 9 times out of 10, it goes sideways. The families either end up using it for something that they shouldn't, or it puts that mentor in a position of too much power in the family where they're then calling the shots. And at the end of the day, you are not living that family's life. You don't actually know what's best for them. And so we've had that situation come up before where a mentor got over-involved with a family beyond the boundaries of what we commit to do. And they ended up causing more harm than good. And they actually put our status in that community at risk.
And we don't want that.
And we don't want that. So you've got to have something in place where you can say, this isn't okay.
Yeah.
But you can't come at a point where the volunteer doesn't know that. And that's what I see happening sometimes, especially with newer nonprofits, is they haven't thought this through. And so then they get angry, but they've never explained what the rules are. They've never explained how to do things. So you have to be very upfront and clear and almost have KPIs for the critical volunteers in your organization.
Kate, you spoke about a code of conduct, and you made reference to something in there about not lending money. And for me, if I look at the environment that you're operating in, an environment where people are struggling, there's need, it seems almost counterintuitive to be told, please don't give these people money. So I'm expecting that because you've got the miles on the road, you can see how this could end up badly. You've got the code of conduct. But some of these things, because they are counterintuitive, people may struggle with them. What are some of the other areas in the code of conduct which are meant to preserve the integrity of the brand, but people struggle with?
Some of them are things that are meant to keep the volunteers safe. So things like there should always be 2 people going out together to the township. That's obviously for the volunteers to be safe, but also for us. So if there's an allegation ever made against you, I am there to back you up in your side of the story. That sometimes, maybe your partner falls sick on the day and you can't be bothered to find another one. So you just go by yourself and you have to have a conversation of why is this a rule? Do you remember?
So it seems like it's just a drag, but if you were ever in a problem, it can escalate.
Yes, and almost all of them come from, we've learned this lesson. This didn't go well. Let's put a rule into place there.
Yeah. Okay. No, exactly. Got it. Another one?
Things like also setting good boundaries in terms of phone contact. So remember, you become a support structure to these families. And sometimes they can get a little carried away about how often they need that support. And then that, ties back with the compassion fatigue. And then they actually just become annoying. Whereas if you as a volunteer or even as a staff member have a good boundary of, I'll talk to you in office hours, for example, or I'll talk to you one day a week, or I'll talk to you on the phone, but please don't send me 87 million good morning messages, right? Things like that. And then there are obviously other ones like you can't, be using drugs or drinking when you're going out to the projects, represent us well, speak well about us. And then also things like the use of donations is quite an important one. So, for example, now at Easter, we run quite a big campaign with Easter eggs, and we distribute those to all of our beneficiaries. And you as a volunteer might see giant piles of Easter eggs sitting in the office and think, oh, I could also have a box of this. It would be very nice. That's not for you. So just to also make things like that clear up front means that I don't have to have a conversation about it later.
Right. So being proactive, giving me a code of conduct that I familiarize myself with the expectations and I agree to it and I signed. And that's how I become part of the process. How do I initiate the process? If I look at the work that you're doing and I decide I want to be a volunteer in that setup, how do I start the conversation? How does that journey look?
So at the moment, we're not in a big intake space for volunteers. But when we were, then we actually had structured information days, and that worked very well. So we had, I think, quarterly, a Saturday morning that was set aside where anyone that was interested could come learn about the program, get the basic information, and then if they wanted to sign up to go on a visit. At the moment, because we don't need such big numbers coming in, it just looks like you come and have a cup of coffee with me.
Very nice. Great. So that's the backbone of the organization, really, the volunteers that are covering all those programs. Wonderful. Let's move on to, can we deal with the compassion fatigue now before we move on? Help me understand what that is, how it manifests itself.
So compassion fatigue is basically a concept where, and you see this a lot in the nonprofit space, you go in very enthusiastic, very, heartfelt. You're going to help all these people and you're going to make a difference. And you feel so sorry for everybody. And then time goes by and you get hit by the reality of the world that we live in, which is that you can't make a difference for everybody. Not everybody wants you to make a difference for them. And some of the people you're trying to make a difference for really genuinely are just annoying, if we're very blunt. And so you start to lose, in a sense, that compassion that you had. You get asked to do so much that you become hard, you put up walls. And so it ties quite nicely in with the boundaries discussion, because I think that's the way to avoid it. But we see this in some of our longer serving volunteers where they become quite hard. Things are very cut and dry. The family is complying or not complying. The school is complying or not complying. Let's just cut them. They don't want our help. And at the end of the day, that's an unhealthy place for you, and it's an unhealthy place for the organization. And especially if you have the leadership of the organization going through that. If we as leaders get into a position of burnout or something like that, then compassion fatigue is very often part of that problem. And so you really need to be very conscious about it. And some of the ways that we deal with it is setting up good boundaries. It's also about setting expectations. There's a lady that I listen to who's got 4 statements, and I may not remember all of them, but it's something like show up, pay attention, tell the truth, and don't get attached to the results. And I think often we're great at the first 3, but we forget that the people that we're helping are actually people with their own agency, with their own lives. And they need to make their own choices, and we may not like those choices, and we've got to be okay with that. So if you get into a point where you're too attached to the results and people are disappointing you, because they will, it's not going to end well.
So compassion fatigue, is it just par for the course if you're in this kind of environment? Or does that mean that something has gone wrong and I've got to this point where I am now exhibiting those symptoms?
That's an interesting question.
I like it when you think about
I was having a conversation last year at a conference, and there were quite a few of us that had been in nonprofit for a while and had all experienced burnout to some degree or the other. And I asked the question, is there something someone could have told you before that you would have listened to and it would have prevented this? And unanimously, all of us around the table said no.
Oh, really?
I mean, does that mean that you can't be well prepared? No, of course not. You can be well prepared, and you can do your best to get into the right mental space. But I do think there's an element of, if you're going to be in the industry for a long time, there are certain things you're going to experience. And I think compassion fatigue may be one of them. But I think if we make people aware of it and what it is and how to deal with it, then when you start recognizing those symptoms, you can come out of it a lot faster. As opposed to just thinking it's normal or thinking there's something wrong with you, or then just giving up and throwing the towel in, because that also happens, that people will start a nonprofit, run it, and then at some point just say, to heck with this, I'm done. And that's not what we want. We want to keep that knowledge and that passion in the industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we look at an organization like yours, where you've got a small team of core members and that's supported by a bigger team of volunteers, who's more susceptible to this?
I'd say all of us, definitely. But I think what helps the core team is that we interact with each other on a daily basis. And so debriefing is also a very big part of being able to deal with something like that. You know, being able to get that feedback to say, yes, that was ridiculous, or yeah, but have you thought about this from their perspective? Maybe this is actually the problem. Did you try handling it another way? And so for the core team, you know, we have regular meetings. We chat about things. If someone's having a problem, they can come and speak to us or to me. Whereas for the volunteers, they may not have as much opportunity to interact with someone that understands what they're doing. Regardless of what background they come from, there's not necessarily other people in their daily lives that really have a good grasp of what their work is like, and it can be very draining. You're confronted by a lot of really difficult realities when you go to the community. And so if the people that they are now telling about their day can't understand it, I think that makes it harder to deal with. So then setting up, you know, opportunities for them to come and to chat and feel like they can at least come and be frustrated and angry is very important as well, and making space for that within your management structure.
Okay. So when people are, rightly you said, if I just try and imagine some of the families that you're working with and supporting, they're going through very difficult situations. They're not thriving. Sometimes it's actually quite hostile, the environments that they're in, and you go in there either as a full-time team member or as a volunteer, and you come out of there. How do you make sure that your mental health is prioritized or not taking a knock over time, because this is regular interactions you're having in those environments?
No, definitely. I think there's a couple aspects. So the one is debriefing, definitely, being able to find someone that understands what you're experiencing to talk about. The other one is being well prepared. So I think when we take on new volunteers, that's why we partner them for those first few months with an existing volunteer, so that they can hear some of these stories, and so they've got someone that they can go to and say, this has just happened. Is this normal? And then I think it's also important just to, you know, retell the hopeful stories as well. So it can be not everyone is going to be a success story. Not everyone is going to make the choices that we want them to. But when we get kids that have made those choices, or we get parents that have succeeded and have overcome things, for us to share those with each other, you know, to say, oh, this family that I'm helping, this amazing thing happened, that gives you that little bit of hope back. And I think if you haven't got hope that things will get better, then your mental health is shot. I think the hope is very important. So just retelling those stories, making sure we've got the opportunity to share them with each other is very important.
All right, great. So as we close on this topic of the volunteers, how do you make Or how do you create an environment where your volunteers want to stay with you for the long haul? Because there's no bonuses, there's no purse,
nothing. They get a chocolate once a year. I mean, that's
keep
very
your chocolate, baby.
I think.
And why I ask this question, because a lot of people, when they're starting, they don't have the budget, they don't have the sponsors, they don't have any of that cash flow that is confirmed. So you're not going to be taking on salary people. So maybe initially to get off the ground,
you need those volunteers.
Yes. So how do we make that work?
I think there's two aspects. The one is appreciation, which sometimes does look like a chocolate. But at the end of the day, do your volunteers know? Well, first of all, are you grateful for them? That's the first question, is actually, are you grateful for them? And if not, think about why. Do they know you're grateful for them? Are you making them feel appreciated? That's quite important. But really, at the end of the day, I think the question is the work that you're giving them meaningful to do? Because that is really what keeps them coming back, is if they feel they're making an impact. So even if they are being ignored and not appreciated, if they feel like really my time there matters and it's making a difference to these children, they will keep coming back. And sometimes they might need help seeing what difference it's making. Sometimes they might get discouraged, and you might need to be the one to remind them, hey, but you had that conversation. Have you noticed how well this child is doing since then? Have you noticed how this family has turned around? Because you have a little bit of a bigger perspective generally. But I think that is the key element at the end of the day. So if your volunteers are coming and you're giving them make work, if you're just having them, sweep the floors and print things, then you have to think through, is it real work that has value? And it might be. I mean, we had one of my favorite volunteers ever was an amazing retired lady with the gift of administration. Mm-hmm. And she would come in maybe every 2 weeks, and she would look around the office, find all the papers that were ready to be filed, and she would file them. And do you know how genuinely helpful that was? Yeah. And so that was an office-based task. It wasn't child-focused, but it was genuinely important. And so I think if the work that they're doing has an actual impact, they'll stick around.
Lovely.
Also, just a last point on that, you mustn't expect them to stick around forever. I think all volunteering has a season, just like everything else in life. And I think one of the challenges we often have is volunteers feel like, because they're also not employed, they can't quit. And so they then just disappear because they feel bad.
They ghost you.
Yes. Whereas we need to create an environment where we also recognize life circumstances can change. The situation with your children could change. Your health could change. And make people feel free to be open and communicative about those things so that things can end well between everybody.
I like that very much. Okay. So going in, we create the framework that there's going to be dialogue. If anything changes, Nobantu, please come and you don't just feel like you are trapped and you've signed your life away and this is forever,
Definitely.
Okay, lovely. I like that. I think this is a nice way to segue into the partnerships conversation because you've got a very interesting view on partnerships.
Given that. So I think nonprofits have a tendency to compartmentalize the people that we deal with.
Right.
And you're a donor or a volunteer or a partner or a competitor or a beneficiary. Yeah. And I think it's much more helpful to look at all of those categories as partners. Because at the end of the day, that's what they are. Our donors are people that we have partnered with. They are giving us funding, and we are giving them the ability to make a significant difference in the communities that they want to serve. If we just see them as a handout, it's not going to be a long-term partnership because we're not doing that give and take that happens in a partnership. Okay. In a partnership, there needs to be something going both ways, right? So when you've got a new donor, you need to ask the question, what does this person actually need? What value are they getting from this? It may be that the value they're getting is just trusting that their money is being spent well. That's fine. Don't then harass them and try to get them to come to a site visit and try to get them to have coffee with you. Do the best you can to show them that their money is being well spent.
But it starts with the conversation being had.
Exactly.
Oh, got it. Keep going.
But you may also find a new donor who actually would love to be involved in a tangible way with the work on the ground. They might have CSI needs, they might have employee volunteering needs, and you need to understand that as the nonprofit side of the partnership so that you know what you can offer so that you are a valued partner to them in the same way they're a valued partner to you. In the same way, you've got your community partners. So for example, our organization does food. That's what we do. If you look at a preschool space, there are a lot of other things that preschools need, right? They need curriculum, they need teacher training, they need help registering with DSD, they need health and safety inspections. Another area that I see newer nonprofits really falling into is trying to put their name on everything. Their name is more important than the work.
And how does that manifest itself?
So for example, so we've now started feeding this school and they need teacher training. Well, it needs to be the Africa Food for Thought teacher training because I want to include it in my annual report. Okay. Whereas that's actually not the most effective. I'm not good at teacher training. I've never been a preschool teacher. It would be much better for the school for me to take them to someone like Smart Start that does this all over the country and has for years and say to them, guys, here's an organization that could really, or here's a preschool that could really use your help. How did they get onto your training platform? Can I then claim to have trained them? No, but is it trained better than it would be if I did it?
I see what you mean.
Does that make sense?
Know that if there is somebody else that can do the job better than me and not try and stake my claim.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So as people are founding organizations as well, or as you're looking to expand your network, you need to look at who else plays in your space. If someone is already in the community that you want to be in, doing the thing you want to do, why are you wanting to do it? Do you have an actual reason, or do you just have a desire to make your own self look good?
You know, Kate, that's a very important point, because as I started to put together the thinking behind this project, and it was starting to take shape, I went and I looked at the Department of Social Development's website, because that's where they track how many nonprofits are operating in the country. So when I started to put my thoughts together around this project, when I looked at that website, there were 220,000 nonprofit organizations registered in South Africa. There's a lot of them.
Wow.
And the last time I checked about a month ago, that number was up to 280,000. So it sounds weird to say this, but it's a very competitive space.
It is.
And you need to be clear on your reason for existing. What is your unique value proposition? Because there are so many others that are maybe trying to solve for the same thing as you, but be clear on your reason for coming into that space.
Exactly. Exactly. And then develop those partnerships. So your reason is this.
Yes.
That's great. That's what you are going to do. What else do the people that you serve need? Do they need social workers? Does that mean I should employ a social worker? I don't think so. I think that means I need to find social workers that want to work with us, that want to serve the community, and partner with them so that it's, again, a helpful relationship for both of us. We're bringing things to their attention. In our case, we're able to offer food support to families that they might identify. They then are able to provide the social work services for the beneficiaries that we serve.
Is that the approach you've taken? Because a few minutes ago, we did talk about the social workers and that you don't have any in your team. That's because you have gone and sought them out and partnered in other ways without creating full-time employment for them.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then we also look at our beneficiaries as our partners.
That is so interesting because I've never heard that before.
And I think that is really one of the things that sets us apart. So if you think about what I'm trying to do, especially in my preschools program, but in the families as well, in the schools as well, I'm trying to feed children, right? If I took a month worth of groceries to a 3-year-old child, is that going to feed them? No. They need to be cooked, right? They need to be presented. They need to be put in a bowl. So at the end of the day, if I didn't have the preschools as my partners, I could not fulfill my mission to the extent that I'm fulfilling it. I would have to be running a soup kitchen where I'm making food at the office, taking it out to a school, feeding the children, and then coming home, and then I'd be feeding maybe 60 kids a day. So you need to understand that you're giving those people something, that's fine, but they're also giving you a service, right? They're providing something for you. And we just find it makes a significant difference in our relationship with them that we view them as partners and not as beneficiaries, because we're now equals.
How do you think you show up differently if that is your mindset?
You're interested in who that person is as a human. You're not just interested in, are we ticking off the boxes? Are we filling our checklist of compliance? You want to know what's actually happening with you. You didn't submit your register last month. Is everything fine? Oh, you've just been diagnosed with cancer. I'm so sorry. How can we support you? Because we're developing an actual relationship instead of just, I'm giving you this, you need to do that, and it's purely transactional. We also are starting to use our preschools as not just resources for ideas, but even as training partners. So, for example, when we went from our 5-day to our 10-day menu, the menu was created by our preschool principals.
Really?
It's not me sitting in the office. So we had a session, and they all put ideas on the board, and it was very loud and lovely.
Give us an idea of what went into that menu. Like, what are we eating Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
Oh, it's a lot of things, hey?
Give me some ideas, man.
Breakfast-wise, it's fairly simple because we want everything to be ready when the kids get there already. So we've got Morvite, we've got porridge, we've got oats, we've got... it's been a while since I've looked at this now. This was 2 years ago that we did this process. And then there's another 2 that I'm forgetting.
Okay, so we are rotating.
That swap around, yeah.
Okay.
Then we've got our snacks. The community is very creative when it comes to snacks because they all have different facilities. So some have fridges, some have freezers, some have gas stoves, some have ovens, some just have a burner. And so, some people are making scones.
Yeah.
Some people are doing really nice, like, custard things.
Okay.
That gets quite creative. And then the meals for lunch, we will tell you which ingredients to use, but not how to make them. So it will be, for example, maybe pilchards and rice. But then you are adding, we provide them with different spices and things, so you're adding whatever spices you want.
So that's some creative license.
You've got creative license, and then we actually encourage them to now send pictures back to us if they've come up with something that they think is very creative. So I forget what it was. Possibly like banana pancakes, I think, that one of them did because the bananas had started to go overripe.
Okay.
And they don't have an oven to make something like muffins or banana bread.
Okay.
So they made some banana pancakes, which I thought was lovely.
That is so amazing.
And again, now they're sending an idea. We're sharing that with the other principals. So we're creating that collaboration, idea sharing. And I think that's very, very important.
Who knew that nonprofits could be such fun?
Oh, yeah. No, we have a great time. We have a great time.
Very good. Let's go then into the partnerships with your funders. We've really started to talk about that. You've taken us through some of the partners that are working on specific programs with you, like KFC. But then you also mentioned crowdfunding. I'd like us to go into a little bit more detail on that. On what are the different crowdfunding platforms that are available out there, and how do you plug into them? Which are the ones that you work with specifically?
So the biggest one that we use, and my favorite personally, is For Good. And that's quite easy to sign up for as long as you've got all of your registrations in place. I think you do need to be a PBO, a public benefit organization, if you want to receive financial donations through them. But if you're a nonprofit, you want to be a PBO anyway. So if you're not there yet, try to get there. And For Good is lovely because you can crowdsource volunteers, donations, and money.
Okay.
So
this is a South African organization?
This is a South African site.
For Good.
For Good.
www.forgood.coza.
Possibly.
Okay.
And it's really targeted. Their main audience is companies. So they will run the corporate volunteering program for a company. Like Volkswagen, I know, is one of their clients. But you can also sign up as an individual, which is lovely. So if your kids need community service, you can go on there and find different opportunities. You can search for all different types of organizations. You can search on the skill set maybe for the volunteering that you need. And you can, as a nonprofit, you can use it for anything. So we will put up opportunities for donation sorting, up to, we got a lovely volunteer through that platform that does graphic design, and she helped us for 3 years running now with our annual report and our newsletters.
Very nice. So this isn't just about getting money.
No. So, and the skills really is a great part of that platform, because again, if I can get someone with a skill to volunteer for me, I don't have to pay them.
Absolutely.
Which is lovely.
Absolutely.
But again, then what do they want out of it? They want to have maybe time off work. They maybe work in a thankless corporate job and they want to make a difference in the world. So again, take the time to understand what's your trade-off here. You can also do donations. So any of the drives that we run, we'll also put on there. So for example, we've got World Book Day coming up, and we're running that campaign next month. So asking people to collect books that are fun for children of all ages. I don't really want your Reader's Digest condensed version of something. I want something the kids actually want to open. But
you still get Reader's Digest.
With great joy, yes.
Okay.
And we can then target that to a huge group of people. They can run something in their office, they can bring it through, and then it helps them also, because at the end of the day, I find South Africans want to make a difference. We want to help people. There's this desire. We know that if you have privilege, you know that you're unique, and many people don't have that. Yeah. And we want to make life better for other people. But your average person on the street doesn't know how to do that. So as nonprofits, we need to make it easy for them, right?
I love that so much.
But again, what's our trade-off? What do they want to get out of it? They want to see that what they've done is making a difference. So you need to make sure you're sending thank yous. You need to make sure you're sending photos if that's appropriate. You need to make sure you're explaining to them where the donation has gone. That's very nice. And then in terms of the actual crowdfunding with money, what I find works best is specific projects. So crowdfunding, I haven't had a lot of success with, give me money for my preschool program.
Okay.
Right? Because it's big. It feels overwhelming. The average person on the street doesn't feel like they can make a significant enough impact.
Really?
But if I say, I've got one kid who wants to go on a netball tour, I got that funded in less than 24 hours.
Really? Nice.
And so obviously you don't have that sort of situation all the time.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily our core business.
And it's also a much smaller content need than solving for the preschool budget.
Exactly.
Okay.
So any sort of contained need like that, or like I was saying, now we're running one at the moment for Bokomoso Creche where they need this drainage system.
Yes, I remember that.
It's a small amount of money. People are donating to that, 3,500.
And then they're sorted.
So
you've taken it to the For Good platform.
Exactly.
How long ago?
2 weeks, and we're more than halfway there. So for that kind of thing, it's very powerful. It is something that you need, like any other form of marketing. It's not going to do your job for you. There are people that complain about this type of platform because they put stuff out there and they don't get a response. Fine, but what are you putting out there? Is it something people are interested in? Are you making it attractive? Are you responding when someone says they're interested to get involved?
Right.
You've got to still do your work. The platform is a tool. It's not your solution.
And you're also competing with other people that are also trying to solve for their causes.
Definitely. So you need to be interesting, right?
Yes, yes.
But if you can get on to something like that, it's very helpful.
Lovely. That is so beautiful. So this is partnerships. So we talked about For Good, but outside of the For Good platform, you also run other fundraisers within the organization.
We do.
How do those look?
So we have sort of two different types. We do fundraising, where we're just trying to get income in. And that can look like anything from cold calling companies to sending out proposals to trying to link up with maybe a foundation of some sort.
Whose job is that?
Mine. And the management committee. I have an amazing management committee that actually does do fundraising. So I'm sorry to everyone else, but mine is great.
Can we talk about that job?
Yes.
And how it is?
It's hard. It's hard. I think it's like being in sales, but you don't actually know if people always want your product.
Yeah.
And so you You just have to acknowledge that you're going to get a lot of no's. What I have done this year that has been very helpful, and I stole this from one of my friends, is I have actually challenged myself to get 100 no's this year.
Okay.
Because if you've got 100 no's, you've probably got at least 20 yeses in there.
Absolutely.
But the no feels better because at least you're like, well, I can add another one to my list. It's
yes,
fine.
we're going for 100, eh?
Exactly. You don't feel bad about it anymore.
I haven't spent as much time in that space as what you have. I've just done it for a little bit with a partner that we're working with in Limpopo. And they are solving for once the matric results come out. So this is a rural community. So we've got kids there. The top learner in that area got 100% for maths and science.
Sure.
I know. So this year, so we through another nonprofit that I work with, we partnered with this foundation. And then their big event was the Mulechi Top 100 Matriculants. So once the results come out, they have a lunch where the villages, it's about 1 million rand, 1 million people population with about 100 small villages. And then they've got one royal leader, the Hoshi, right? So the Hoshi will invite those 100 top learners to have lunch with him. But it's a big thing, like marquee, brass band, everything. And then they will raise funds for those top 100 learners to help them get registration fees for university, laptops, get them set up in a digs. So I got involved in the fundraising for this thing. So I came in there like January, you know, like I'm so excited, and we've just come back from our December break. We're all invigorated, and the amount I had to slow down because I come from logistics where everything goes like really, really fast, and you got pre-alerts for everything, and things happen like clockwork, and there's an app to track everything, and it does not work like that with fundraising. Yeah. For starters, it's such a mission to find people in their offices if you're cold calling, because a lot of people work remotely or certain days they're in the office and they're not, so you need to time that to when they're in the office. And then there are people that get like thousands of emails a day. So you drop them an email and it's like, which is the most urgent one? And maybe yours is not necessarily the most urgent one. And you have to keep checking, did you get it? Have you had a chance to? And you need to understand people are juggling multiple priorities. I think we're living in a season where people are so stretched in terms of what they need to deliver at work. And are you not going to get your bonus because you didn't do this donation? I don't think so. There are other more pressing issues. So you need to be gentle and be mindful of where the other person comes. So the whole learning for me was, it's a slow burn.
Yes.
But you're going to go find those people that are going to say yes. People want to give. And sometimes it's tied to the financial year end.
Often, yes.
And you need to be mindful of that. Sometimes there's a committee that needs to review this. And they don't meet every day. They meet quarterly or every half a year. So we need to be mindful of these things and just learn to understand how the system works so that we can position ourselves for success. But for me, the big learning was, it's a slow burn. Calm down, make your coffee, drink it, sip it nice, because this is a slow burn.
Definitely. Definitely. And you can't let yourself get discouraged.
Yes. Because also, I think corporate South Africa is a big fan of CSI. If you follow the work that Trilog does, they document the amount of money that goes into CSI, and it's a lot of zeros. And they've compounded, they've been tracking since 1988. And I think the last report that I looked at, it was billions, multiplicity billions that corporate South Africa has put into this space. So I think you just calm down and just go at a nice pace, but you will find somebody, and you also got to align with their organizational priorities. Some are sport people, some are ECD people, and if you're an ECD person, find who the ECD people are, and there's better prospects of you making that partnership work.
Yeah, no, and you also have to think about, are you going after the same 20 people that everyone else is going after? We often are. So one area that we have had a lot more success in is targeting the SMMEs.
Okay.
You know, rather than saying we have some very big corporate partners and we're very grateful to them, but they're hard to get in with. And what we find is often, we talked about social capital. Use your social capital within the organization. Who do you know that you can speak to? So we've really started a strategy of trying to target your smaller to medium enterprises. Because again, I'm not asking for large amounts of money from most people. We do have some very significant funders, which is amazing. But when we first start a relationship with someone, I'm generally asking for them to fund maybe one preschool for a year.
And that would look like how much money?
That's generally maybe $25,000.
Okay, so it's not
So
a huge
for a
budget.
medium enterprise, that might be within their CSI budget. And sometimes we write them off because they don't necessarily need to do your BEE giving, right? They're not doing the SED spend. And we do love a good SED spend. That's money with no strings attached usually. But they have a heart still. And like we just said about most South Africans, they want to give. And if you can get in with the company when they're still small, if they then grow, often you're very well set up. But fundraising in the corporate space isn't just a matter of having a well-written proposal. Often it is still about who you know, how you can get your foot in the door, how can you get that first conversation. And so it's really important to then think through strategically who's on your management committee, who's on your board, who are you hiring? Do these people have contacts?
That is so important.
Will they be willing to use them? Does your board believe enough in your vision that they want to speak about you somewhere else?
Yeah.
That's not always the case, and it's important to make sure that it is.
I've just thought of something else, Kate, that sometimes when you get a no after submitting a proposal or pitching, it's not necessarily a no. Sometimes it's a not now, because there's either we overcommitted for this year, but next year we get a new budget, or there's a change in strategy, or there's a this. So sometimes it's a not yet. And so you need to find a way to keep that relationship going.
Definitely.
During that period. There was something else that I thought of. How comfortable are you with asking for money?
Reasonably comfortable.
Is it?
Yes, I've gotten better at it. And I think it helps that you're asking for someone else, if that makes sense. So again, you need to remember, you're not asking for handouts, you're offering them a partnership.
Correct.
You're saying, this is what we can do, and it's going to take this much. Do you want to be part of this?
Yes.
And if they don't want to be part of it, that's fine. We're going to find a way to do it anyway. But we would love to offer you the opportunity to be part of this thing.
But my reason for asking you how comfortable you're asking for money is because I think that is a skill you have to master.
Definitely.
And I think a lot of us come in and be very nervous. It makes us uncomfortable, even that we're asking for somebody else. These are conversations that I've had with other nonprofits around me, like, girl, why aren't you asking for money? You're doing such brilliant projects. So we need to overcome the fear of asking for money. And you just got to give yourself a 10. You need to develop yourself to get to a point where I'm a 10 at asking for money. Even in my sleep, I can ask for money. I've got that elevator pitch, I'm ready. I can ask for money. And for me, it's a developmental. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. Talk to me next year. I think I'll be better.
Interestingly, on that, we just had a conversation. So one of our management committee members is very good at asking for discounts. Now, I am happy to ask for money. I'm very uncomfortable to ask for a discount because you've told me what you think your service is worth. And now I'm wanting you to do it for less. And I feel a little bit weird about that. So it's interesting that even those two things in my mind are very different.
Yeah.
But then you need to also think about the strengths of your team.
Yes.
So if we're going to do a pitch to a corporate where we're saying, we need this donation to do this, I am your girl. I will be there with great joy. If we need to go to a service provider and say, will you do it for cheaper? I'll just send Claire.
Yes.
Because she's good at it. She's comfortable about it. So if you don't have that skill, make sure someone in your team does. Hire strategically.
That's wonderful. I like that. Good. We're on the home run now. So the last question that I wanted to ask you. So Philip, your financial year runs from when to when?
March to February.
Okay, so we're brand new in the new financial year. What are your big, hairy, audacious goals for this current financial period?
So we have just had a number of families graduate from our families program.
Yes.
Graduate meaning their kids have finished. They're now ready to go and work, ready to go and study. They're not getting the monthly support anymore.
Right.
And so the program has decreased fairly dramatically, which is fine because we've also had some funding shifts where people that were prioritizing that, as you say, have moved in a new strategic direction. And they're maybe involved with preschools now, for example. So I think our biggest goal for this year is really to grow that program financially before we grow it in terms of numbers so that we can offer continuity to those numbers. And then we've just learned this last week that our volunteer vehicle, so the one that all of our mentors use to go out into the community, is irreparable.
What happened to it?
It's a long story. Okay. Basically, the short version is if you're going to have 10 different people drive your car, and it's also like 20 years old, it's going to get to this stage eventually, right? And so we now have just learned that we need to buy a new vehicle that we haven't budgeted for.
What vehicle is that?
It's an X-Trail at the moment.
An X-Trail is a big Nissan 4x4. Okay, so it's not it's not a starter pack vehicle.
Yeah, you've driven in squatter camps, right? We need something that can deal with the
vehicle. Yes. Okay, great.
So that is our second one. We're
looking for
serious fundraising for a vehicle as well.
And the first, the vehicle, I'm seeing a number of maybe $500,000, depending on whether you're getting it brand new or secondhand. But for the first one, for the family program, what's the number to support that?
It's about similar.
It's about similar.
With the goal that we've got, we'd like to raise $500,000 this year for it.
Okay, so we're looking for at least $1 million.
At least $1 million.
About. Yeah. What else?
We also have just this last year transitioned our. I don't know if this is going to make sense, but we've transitioned the way that we handle our investment accounts to a better package. So we've met with someone at FNB and they helped us. And we're earning a good amount more interest now, which is really nice.
Okay.
And we've had 2 of our partners who are willing to actually invest into an investment account, which is a great way to increase our sustainability, because then if we've got money earning interest, we could eventually, hopefully, operate some of the programs out of the interest and also have that base. So that's the really audacious one for me, is that's harder to raise money for, but if we could get some people to really invest into that investment.
I have never heard of that before. So we're looking at what a corporate to write a check that's going to be in your investment account. So whose balance sheet does it reflect on?
On ours.
And then what is that? So if they'll invest it for a certain amount of time?
So they're giving us the money. We're not going to give it back.
Okay.
So as opposed to you're giving me $50,000 to feed 2 preschools, you're giving me $50,000 for me to have $50,000 and make money off of that.
Got it. I understand. That is so creative. Is this a thing? I've never heard of this.
I think it is a thing. I stole it from another organization.
Oh, you did? You go.
Thank you. But, it also is the way that we have run our bursary fund.
Okay, yes. For the post-matrics.
Yes.
Okay.
And so now we're trying to take that idea and expand it.
Wonderful. And what kind of number are we looking for there?
Whatever people want to give us would be great.
But it's a donation that's going to be invested into an significantly interest-bearing account. Lovely. Is that it?
I think those are my goals.
Is that it? That is so amazing. Wonderful. So the kind of partners that you would like to support with is people that have got cash to write. So
definitely. Always good.
That can sign checks, that can either give you a vehicle, or what was the other thing? Is also cash. First one was cash, vehicle, and then cash. So how do people get hold of you?
So the easiest way is through our website, which is www.afft.org.za. And AFFT is our initials. So Africa Food for Thought, AFFT. Or they can send an email to info@afft.org.za. Those are the 2 best ways.
What about social media?
We're on Facebook. So if you just search Africa Food for Thought there, you'll find us as well.
Instagram?
We're on Instagram. We don't optimize Instagram.
Okay.
So I wouldn't try to contact you
on
Instagram, to be honest.
And what about X?
No.
You're not on X. Great. Clear on your social media presence.
Exactly. We have targeted goals.
There's something else that I want to talk about. We didn't talk about how we found each other.
True.
Okay, so...
You'll have to tell that story.
Okay, great, no problem. So I just did a Google search. Nonprofits that are solving for food security, and your name popped up. And when I told you that... Exactly. So let's talk about how... Because that's a cool techie thing that I don't know if a lot of people know how to optimize the search engine optimization. So can you talk about that also, please?
I'm going to be honest. I don't necessarily know how to optimize my search engine optimization, but it's working. No, I do it. So my understanding of it, basically, and it gets much more complicated than this. So if you want help, ask someone that knows what they're doing. Don't ask me. But basically, you need to figure out what are people looking for that are looking for you.
Right.
So, food security, feeding program, feeding hungry children, childhood nutrition, volunteering is often a big one.
I put food security.
There you go. So food security. And then you need to use those words as often as you can all over your website.
There's a name for that.
Yes.
I've forgotten it. I'll remember. I'll remember it. But keep going.
That's all I've done, to be very honest.
Keywords.
There we go.
Keywords.
Keyword searching.
Okay.
And so we've been working slowly over the years to get our website looking better. We've actually got someone working on it for us at the moment, which is going to go live soon, hopefully. But yes, I think but that again is why it's important to be focused on what you do. Because if you're trying to do all the things, no one's going to fund you.
Absolutely. I get that.
Also, a last free tip for startup nonprofits. If you don't have a name yet, name yourself something with the letter A.
What do you mean?
Because I promise you, we have people that find us all the time because we are on alphabetical lists and we're at the top.
Oh, really?
I'm not joking.
Okay. Note to self, if I ever register a nonprofit organization, I will do that. Awesome. Do you know, for me, what I think is the most amazing thing about AFFT? It was started by 2 people. How many people? That saw little kids that were hungry. And over 15 years, look what you've grown into, an organization that's partnering with global multinationals. The Yum is a multinational, multi-billion-dollar organization, and they're your partner, and you're just doing some of the most incredible work. So that's why I think your story is so intriguing, and I'm so grateful that I found you via search engine optimization. We didn't talk about your financial management, how you look after your finances and the financial reporting that you do.
True. Would you like to?
Quickly, yes.
Quickly. All right. So I think one of the most important things for nonprofits is there's maybe a perception that we're not professional, and there's a lot of fear of fraud and things like that. So if you are running a nonprofit, one of the things that you have got to be completely above board in is your financials. Donors need to be able to see where their money is going. The general public needs to see that you are actually taking that money and running programs with it and not just lining your pockets or paying your staff extravagant salaries. And so we have sort of a 3-tiered system. The one is that no one has complete access to the bank account. So there isn't anyone within the organization that can do all of the steps required to make a payment.
Okay.
So I will load payments and then Claire will release them. We have my colleague Sally, who's our bookkeeper, and she will authorize the payments ahead of time. So she will be the one that says this is what we need to pay, and create our payment requisition for that with the invoice. We then have a very comprehensive system for filing that and for tracking it digitally. Then we give it to an accountant who reviews it again. And they do our monthly financials for us. And then we have an auditor that looks at our compiled financials. So interestingly, we do not have audited financials. And so far, we have not had a donor that has required that from us. Compiled financials would be an auditor has looked at them and they look in order. Audited would be the auditor has come to you and looked at your receipts.
Okay, now that's a fundamental difference. So I didn't even know the first option existed.
Yes.
So you just submit them to what, like an auditing firm, and you say, look at them. But then they don't send their audit team with all that entourage to come and manually look through where's the paper trail for this one and where's the paper trail for this one and where are the signatories for that. They don't do all that. Okay, so this, having an auditor look at it, is still acceptable.
To most people, yes. So you need to understand who the donors are that you're targeting and what their requirements are. And it may be that it's worthwhile for you to have audited financials because you're going after someone that requires them. So far, we haven't had that. But obviously, if we ever did, we would need to have it done. We have been audited for projects before. So specific funding comes in, and then we've had people come out and then look at the slips.
And so that would be the specific funder or the donor for that project.
Yes, that has organized that. Right. And so that's something that's sort of interesting because obviously audited financials are quite expensive if you're paying an auditor. If you can find a pro bono auditor, hold on to them.
That was also one of the questions that I wanted to ask. Your accountant and your auditors, do you pay for that?
We are paying for
Okay.
Primarily because one of the members of the accounting team also sits on our management committee. So we want to have a professional relationship with their firm rather than just have her do it for free and then it could look like, she's doing things for us.
Wonderful. This has been so amazing. Thank you so much. So I've learned another new thing.
There you go.
That you can have an auditor just look at your financials and make sure that everything looks about, there's no red flags for them, and then that's okay. That's good to go. Wonderful. Kate, thank you so much for your time. All the best to you and the team at Africa Food for Thought. It was amazing. Wonderful learning experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.